Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of PodMarc, Podcasts for Good, where we seek to spotlight organizations, personalities, communities in Singapore that are striving to be a force for good. Today, we are diving into the fascinating world of medical and biotech. We're going to be exploring career options in this dynamic sector that has created for Singaporeans opportunities in this exciting space. I'm thrilled to have two outstanding guests with me in the studio today. First up is Jeremiah, Vice President of Operations at MiRxes, a global leader in microRNA biotech. And alongside him is Levina, an aspiring medical student who's currently in public healthcare. She's currently pursuing a secondary degree in medicine, and that's quite incredible. Both Jeremiah and Levina are driven by a passion to harness their expertise in health tech and healthcare to germinate a movement of good. And as a bonus, they both call Sengkang East home, where my team and I are privileged to serve. So welcome to the program, folks.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having us.
Yeah. Let's kick off with a quick introduction, maybe. Lavina, why don't you start us off?
Okay, hi, my name is Levina. So I'm an aspiring medical student here, and I'll be embarking on my studies in February next year. And currently, I'm working in the public healthcare. Yeah.
Great. And Jeremiah, over to you.
Right. So, as you have introduced, my name is Jeremiah, and I'm the VP of Operations in MiRxes. Joined the company when it was just a very small company, about 20 to 30 men strong. Today, we are about close to 300 people strong. Wow. We've grown the company, and so my role is really to look at the company operations, work together closely with the R&D teams to identify what are the pipelines that's coming through, operationalize, translate them into products and services, and at the same time as running the organization as well in terms of supply chain, procurement and all that. So it's a combination of operations, science and business, and it's very exciting. I'm very happy to be here to share about that. So I think looking at the biotech ecosystem, it's a huge ecosystem actually. It's one of those ecosystems that have grown from strength to strength over the multiple years, right? And MiRxes sits in the middle of the ecosystem, focusing on molecular technologies and specifically RNA technology. So what we have is a proprietary microRNA molecule that allows you to understand your body a little bit more, whether it's in terms of cancer, infectious diseases, or even just your general lifestyle, right? And so what it does is it gives you that predictive value. So what we believe as a company is using that technology, let's look at diseases, let's look at cancer, and let's look at lifestyles at an early stage, and so what we advocate for is early detection, and so that's what we do. The innovation is looking at not just the RNA molecule, but multi-omics in general. So when I say multi-omics, we are looking at proteins, we are looking at other types of biomarkers in our body that give an indication of when a disease might onset in the future, right? So what we did was we used microRNA to form a risk evaluation of a person's condition, and you could see, the potential of, say, for example, gastric cancer being something that's of high risk for you. And so you could start working on lifestyles, to not have that cancer onset at stage 1 or even stage 2. Now, we all know a lot of times when it comes to cancer, it's usually when we are symptomatic. So what we advocate for using science is let's not wait till it's symptomatic. Let's do it in the asymptomatic stage through screening. So, in that case, it's also easier for people like yourself to practice medicine in the future because you are impacting a wider target audience.
Right.
And it's more impactful in terms of medical practice as well.
Yeah.
I think a lot of doctors would agree with me by saying that most of the time it's because that they find the disease a little bit too late. And so treatment gets a little bit more tricky.
Right.
Yeah, so bringing everything earlier makes things so much easier for the whole ecosystem, including the development of new technologies, medical practices, clinical practices.
Right. And what's also fascinating is that it enables people to believe that we are not predestined based on the state of our health.
Absolutely, yes.
Right?
We are not predestined, correct?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Things can change, and the earlier we discover markers or signals, and the quicker we maybe intervene or change our lifestyle, perhaps we could change the fate of how we fare,
Absolutely,
right?
absolutely. And this would tie in not just to lifestyle itself, but also to even diet, the way, and even mental stress. There are so many connections to the human body today, and so it's not just looking at molecules anymore, but taking all these molecules and linking them back to how we live our lives right from the start, in our teens, in our young adulthood, and in our slightly older lives, right?
Yes.
There are biological changes and there are environmental changes that kind of speed up certain processes as well. So MiRxes looks at that. We started off really so much as a technical company that looks at molecules, but the journey over the last 10 years of the company has made us realize that, look, science itself doesn't really work if you don't translate it from bench to bedside. Number two, it must be translated in accordance to the population and also
Right.
the lifestyles that we lead.
It's very contextual.
Yeah, yes.
And speaking about journeys, Jeremiah, your background is you did bioscience. That's
Yes,
your
I did
background.
biomedical science. That's
Biomedical
right.
science. You went on to get an MBA.
Yes.
And that I think equipped you well in your journey in not just the breakthroughs, but at the same time making sure that the institution or the organizations that you represent are geared towards producing those breakthroughs.
Yes.
Share with us a little bit about that career journey, and then I'll invite Levina to also weigh in because you are an aspiring practitioner in this space. But maybe Jeremiah first.
I was very focused on doing a little bit of bench research. So I started off my career as part of A-Star, doing some research officer work. Fast forward many years later, I got into manufacturing actually. So I was more focused on biotech manufacturing. Now, getting into MiRxes, I went in with that skill set. Over the years, that responsibility expanded because I think firstly, it's not so much about just building products anymore. You've got to really look into the pipeline of the R&D, really look at what is needed and an unaddressed need in society as well. And so that's where I decided, we had a talk internally and say, okay, look, let's see how I could do more, right? And so I started to take on more responsibilities beyond manufacturing. I started to look into quality assurance, regulatory affairs, and then that just kind of expanded along the way. And to fast forward again till today, you cannot put a good product out only if the company is not having a healthy margin as well. So it's also economics, it's business, it's science, it's healthcare, right? So today I'm also looking at numbers, right? Say if we put this product out, sure, you're going to save a lot of lives. Is it sustainable for the company, right? And so we look at profit margins, bottom lines, and top lines as well.
Right.
And that MBA has helped me very, very drastically as well. Yeah, so moving from a pure science background, going to a manufacturing operational background, and today looking at company operations has been a journey. As you mentioned, it's been more than a decade. So that whole journey has been about 10 plus years, coming to 20 years.
Indeed. And it's evolved, right? It's evolved. And Levina, I think you, as somebody who's aspiring to forge a profession in this space, what sparked your interest in this potential evolution in your own career?
I think it started from when I was very young. So I grew up in a family business in beauty. So, I will go to the shops, I will help out, and then I will just observe the customers. They are always very happy, and then they come out, so happy with their skin condition. They're like, oh, it's so nice, and they always come back. For the past 10 years that I've gone, I see customers like, oh, I seen you like many years ago, you're still here, and many things like that. So, as a child, I was thinking, what more can I do for my family business, or what else can I explore apart from beauty? So then I stumbled onto medicine. And then because I want to make people feel better in the way they look and the confidence, and to help in the overall well-being, emotional well-being as well. Because I myself, I feel that sometimes I'm not confident with how the way I look. So, I want to be an aesthetic doctor to actually help people with how they look and how they feel internally. So it's not just about outer appearance, but it's also healing the inner side of them, the emotional side, through my skills, my treatments, using like machines, the high-tech machines, to do all that for them.
The aesthetics is merely a means to an end, in your view.
Yes, that's right. It's just an avenue for me to make people feel better. and for people to create a sustainable business as well lah. Like for everyone to actually come in, and then you hear life stories when you meet new people,
Right.
even through patients and customers. You grow with them, and in that that's a very valuable thing that I feel medicine can give to me. And that's why I feel that as an aesthetic doctor, I get the best of both worlds. I get to meet new people, learn their life lessons, and I also get to make them feel better about themselves emotionally and in the outer way. Yeah.
Now, Jeremiah used an interesting phrase earlier, from bench to bedside. And you're also currently involved in a public sector healthcare institution. Tell us a little bit more about that experience.
Okay, I think my first degree was in HR and business, right? So it ties in a lot with the healthcare as well, because right now I'm doing more of the HR side of things. I actually see a lot of how the public healthcare runs and how it really comes from like the technical side to the bedside. So it's a really rigorous process, and there's a lot of things that goes into it. So it really takes a whole village to make the public healthcare work, and it makes me appreciate our frontliners more, because I've seen how back ends things are working and how the front end coordinates with it. So I'm really appreciative of the things I learned in the public healthcare. Yeah.
Indeed. And in Singapore, we've not just made it a whole village, we've made it a whole of nation effort to improve healthcare for Singapore. A lot of things could essentially be prevented, anticipated through technologies that what MiRxes is pioneering. But let's bring it closer to home, right? Jeremiah and Levina. How do you see healthcare, medtech, biotech potentially collaborating with communities, making an impact on the ground in a place like Sengkang East, for example? Any thoughts, Jeremiah?
Okay, so I've always been a strong advocate of education, right? So I think the first one is let residents understand that health is golden. Health is of prime importance, right? A lot of us get very caught up in our daily lives of work, whatever industry we are in, taking care of the family and stuff like that. So the first step is education. And then the call to action really should be, okay, now that you know, right, how important health is, let's do some tangible stuff. Let's talk about doing triaging on site. Let's talk about, understanding your body through early screenings, for example. And it doesn't have to be as painful as a blood draw. It could be a finger prick, or it could be as simple as educating you and triaging you, just looking at your lifestyle. I think one of the things that we've done successfully as a company is do a East meets West combination. So you look at your 体质, but yet you also look at the biomarkers in the body. Right. We've not drawn conclusions between the two, but it's two ways of, it's two ways of managing, right, your health, in one in the Eastern way, one of a Western way. There are many ways to do it. So I feel that the call to action is, number one, education. Secondly is being present on the ground to say, come, let's partake in an activity. Let's look at how we can individually, improve our health, our lifestyles, and bring in a bit more of a well-balanced, healthy lifestyle, diet and stuff like that as well.
Interesting. Yeah. And would MiRxes be organized in such a way that you actually have people who are fluent in the Eastern way, as well as the Western way, as well as with the on-ground connections to make that impact in communities? How does that work?
Oh, yes. So I guess MiRxes is very focused on what we term as the Western, which is more of the biomarkers, right? So we collaborate with external parties to see if we could cross value add to each other in terms of being more informative about our bodies and our health indicators and stuff like that. So that's through collaborative effort.
Okay. And I guess the audience that see a lot of value in these screening exercises, would you say that they're mainly in the older segment, or do you see a mix across the demographics?
There is a mix. It depends on what do we want to achieve through some of these events. Sometimes it's more towards letting the elderly understand their situation and making them realize that don't don't shy away from the doctor. Okay, if you don't want to see a doctor, let's go through an event, slowly discover, because at the end of the day, what they want is longevity, right? To spend time with their families. And some just want to see, how things turn out for them eventually, right? For the younger ones, we don't see much of a challenge because everyone's quite health conscious recently. So everyone's very well insured. They're going for their screenings, So what we do is we take that to a more specific level. Let's look at some diseases that you may be concerned about. Like, again, I'm going back to gastric cancer, right? Gastric cancer is one of the top cancers in Singapore as well. So, what has it got to do with you, right? As an individual, is it your diet? Drinking too much of hot soup, too much of raw fish, and stuff like that. So for the well-insured and the well-covered ones, we say, okay, let's do a little bit more prevention as well. So let's also screen. But it ultimately all comes together as one community to say, okay, let's all just do screening and take back these results and what you've discovered about yourself with your GPs and your specialists, right? And go on that journey of improvement of your health, or even just maintenance. Yeah, so there are so many angles that we can look at, in terms of screening. A lot of people think it's just bringing everyone together and drawing some blood but what happens after that? I think that education is also very important.
And speaking of that, community involvement, making an impact, Levina, I mean, this is something that you're passionate about, and I hear that you have also channeled these experiences and your passion toward good in some communities. Maybe share with us a little bit about that experience.
I think firstly, towards community is a since young thing. I love to volunteer and stuff like that. So actually, me and my friends, we are like in the midst of starting our own NGO to try to involve the communities and doing more of geriatric work. So like on the elderlies and stuff like that. And apart from that, I think how youths like me in Sengkang East can actually contribute back to like maybe the Biotech is to actually have programs to actually involve youths, to nurture them into talents in the biotech industries, to get to know more about those industries that, hey, maybe youths can be, know more about them in the early, because, sustainable businesses, you always need new blood in businesses. So, maybe with youths, there will be more innovations involved, and like, more youths will be interested to get to know more about what biotech does, and maybe from there, Sengkang East will have more people that's more interested in all these programs, and hopefully be able to onboard into like community events that Sengkang East will do in the future. That's something like that.
Interesting. So Levina, if I hear you right and read your background right, you moved from business into medicine, and you're playing in the intersection now between business and medicine. And that has bolstered your ability to make a contribution in a public healthcare space. Now that you're hearing Jeremiah's story and the company that he represents, there is another intersection that has surfaced, and that it potentially is with technology and biotech. And do you see this actually thinking about fellow youth, your peers, who also want to make a difference? Do you see this space as burgeoning, as attractive to young talent who also want to help grow that sector in Singapore?
Yes, definitely. I feel that medicine just can't be alone. It takes technology, it takes people, it takes new blood, it takes innovation, and all this comes hand in hand with everyone. So definitely, tech will be always evolving, and we need people to run all those technologies. And like Jeremiah's company, which is a great I would say foundation for the youth to actually step on to actually venture their interest in biotech industry as well, like that. And for the public healthcare, I feel that tech is something that they're always looking at. Be it having better technologies to check for patients, healthcare, and even on back end as well. Tech is always there. So I feel that for youth nowadays, we are very interested in how we can merge our passions with technology as well. I feel that in that way, it will be an even more efficient way of running different industries. Yes.
Okay. Now, Jeremiah, back to you. As someone who spent close to 2 decades in this domain, what would one or two pieces of advice that you would give to aspiring practitioners, talent who might want to contribute to this sector?
I think first, develop that passion, right? And that passion is the passion for a better life, right? It comes from that big picture. Then comes the passion for science, right? But I must reiterate that, in this whole ecosystem, it's not just the scientists that make the success, right? It's the manufacturing people, it's the finance people, it's the bioinformaticians. It's a huge community of people, right? And everyone comes together, at least in MiRxes, is driven by that passion to serve the community for a better health, right? A better life in terms of the quality of life that we're going to have in the future. So build that passion first. I think that then the next thing is, what are you really good at? I always feel that we are very different from where we were, say, 20, 30 years ago, whereby, you focus on one thing in the university, you're down a single path. Actually, opportunities have presented themselves to a lot of our youth today to cross function, cross ecosystems, cross industries as well. So find your place there, right? And that passion, the technical competency would drive you really far. Again, I'm speaking from first-hand experience working with people, who really have that passion, and in a short amount of time, they've accomplished so much. And directly, then the company has accomplished because of all these people as well. So that's my advice. Find that passion, build that level of competency, be very focused on your North Star and move towards that. You will have a few milestone changes while you go towards your North Star, and that's fine. I've been through a few myself as well, and don't let yourself be discouraged by that.
Okay.
But success is definitely fueled by passion.
Okay.
That's for sure.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Levina, now back to you, right? Jeremiah essentially talked about passion, your power, your place, and your sense of purpose. What do you think as somebody who's aspiring to join the sector?
Well, yes, definitely. I agree with what Jeremiah said. It's exactly how I feel about things. Because when I was younger, I used to think that, if I'm doing a degree in this specialization, I will go down that path, But things change. And don't be afraid of changes, because change is the only constant in life.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes. So, with all that in place, you should be comfortable with change and adapt towards it. Yeah. So, in any case, you should be happy that things are changing for you for the better, and just work towards it. Have faith in yourself. Definitely enjoy the process. That's all I feel. That makes everything less scary. It's when you enjoy the process itself.
That's fantastic. So we've clearly got the right people. We are potentially developing a platform that I think, when harnessed together, can truly make a difference and move the needle for fellow residents and families in a place like Sengkang East. So hopefully we would be able to explore a collaboration with MiRxes, with talents like yourself, Levina, to make a difference. Yeah, so that's a topic for another day. But before we wrap up, I'd love for you both to share any books or readings that you like to recommend our readers. I think of it as a nod to the name of my YouTube channel that we'll host this podcast on, and that's bookmark.sg. So, Jeremiah, what's on your must-read list?
Okay, so I have a lot, but I think what would make a lot of sense is this book. It's called Think, Wits and Win. It's actually the English version of Sun Tzu Bing Fa, right? And it's one of those books that you will never finish reading, because you will revisit each chapter time and time and time again. And it's not so much on a professional capacity, right? The Sun Tzu's Art of War teaches you how to deal with life in general, right? And so if you look at it, strategy, operational excellence, how do you even run your home, right? How do you handle perhaps your mother or mother-in-law, something. And it's all in here. How do you navigate life, right? And so it's one of those books that I've been reading for months to a year, but I don't progress too far until I absolutely absorb myself and internalize a chapter and what it really means. There's no point covering breadth in a book like this. You should cover the depth. And so I thought this would be very interesting to bring up. And if anyone who has trouble reading too deep Mandarin, there is an English version. Read it, and it's very applicable to life, even when you're a student as well.
Indeed.
Yeah.
I like how you talk about it as helping to shape a cast of mind.
Yes.
Right? And it's not just about, peripheral tips and tricks, right? It's essentially a sense of being.
Yes.
Right? Okay, great.
Yeah.
And Levina, I'd like to invite you to share your must-read.
Okay, yeah, my must read, it says the song of the cell. So like what the title actually says is all about cells and the history of cells. So why did I bring this book is because I feel that the basis of medicine comes from cells. You know, with your DNA, your RNA, everything that you read comes from your cells. So I feel that this book is really interesting because it doesn't only just tell you the history of cells, but it's also how medicine have developed based on cells. And like what Jeremiah does, Biotech, you know, everything is really covered in this book. And you know, it will pique your interest in knowing more beyond medicine and maybe go into biotech as well.
Interesting. It gives a fascinating narrative around something that's quite scientific and atomic. So hopefully that broadens the captive audience who might be keen to delve deeper into the topic.
Yes, that's
Yeah.
right.
So in the spirit of today's podcast on health and biotech, I've been reading this book called Human Diversity, the Biology of Gender, of Race and Class. The core message of this book is that it advances in genetics and neuroscience. I mean, we now know so much about that, right? These fields. And these discoveries are now challenging the conventional wisdom that has long shaped the way we've approached social sciences, and at least in three areas. The first proposition is that gender and race are essentially social constructs. Second is that class is entirely a function of privilege. And third is that abilities are solely the result of merit. And this author, Charles Murray, argues that these beliefs are interesting because they are baked in a bit of a half-truth. It's half-truth because there is an element as a recognition that there are some traits that we inherit, nature. There are some things that can be honed through nurture. But a large chunk of what accounts for those traits actually hasn't been explainable. And for me, this perspective affirms a long-held suspicion, right, that we should actually feel humble at our own stations in life, particularly since we exist in a meritocracy. And I think we should recognize that those who have done well have succeeded not purely because of their own effort. And at the same time, those who have struggled should not bear the full burden of their station in life. That's just life. And in embracing this worldview, I hope that we would all become a lot more empathetic, more inclined to share in each other's joys and challenges, and essentially, you know, feel that we all have a stake in trying to improve the broader outcomes for society as a whole. And ultimately, we strive to be better together, right? And that's my takeaway from this book, Human Diversity. So with that, thank you both for your insights. Thank you for the incredible work that you are making, Jeremiah, in MiRxes. The potential of creating community impact is immense. Thank you, Levina, for pursuing your passion, discovering your purpose very early on, now wanting to make a contribution in the healthcare and medical fields, and now remaining open to the potential that technology can make to those disciplines that you have, and also feeling that sense of purpose and moving from that place of purpose to want to make a difference in society. I truly hope that we can all come together one day in Sengkang East to make a difference from a medical and healthcare perspective for our residents and families here. Right. So with that, it's a pleasure having the both of you
Thanks
on
for
the show.
having us.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Yeah.
And to our listeners, that's it for this episode of PodMarc, Podcast for Good. Keep tuning in as we continue to shine a light on those who are seeking to make a difference to society, to Singapore, starting humbly in Sengkang East. With that, thank you very much. I'll see you next time. Bye.